Growing up in a small town, I was always surrounded by people who knew each other. Family bonds, friendships, and loyalty meant everything. It wasn't until later in life that I realized how fragile those connections could be. My brother Larry and I shared nearly everything, or so I thought. We were twins and looked alike, but we couldn't have been more different. I enjoyed working on mechanical projects, helping out at our father's junkyard, while Larry was more drawn to sales and smooth talking. As time passed, though, life revealed the cracks in relationships we had taken for granted. What I didn't see coming was how those small cracks would eventually grow into a wide chasm between us. My life changed significantly when I married Abigail, a strong, successful woman who had her own career in insurance. We built a home together and seemed to have a perfect marriage. But over time, I began to notice small things, little signs that something was off. Abigail's behavior shifted, and there were moments when I couldn't shake the feeling that my trust was misplaced. I never imagined that this unease would unravel not only my marriage, but also the fragile peace between my brother and me. It's strange how quickly things can change. My whole world turned around the day I went on a fishing trip with a couple of close friends. Meanwhile, my wife Abby was at work when she got a disturbing phone call. "Is this Abigail Bell?" the caller asked. "Yes, speaking. How can I help you?" she replied, confused. "We have your husband. He's been taken hostage, and we are demanding a ransom of $250,000. You have 24 hours to get the money, or he will be eliminated. Don't involve the police, or he dies. Expect another call at 3 p.m. for further instructions." Shocked and terrified, Abby tried to compose herself. "What? Who is this? Is this a joke?" The caller's cold tone left her paralyzed with fear. She had no idea what to do next. I had gone on a fishing trip with some friends to Lake Erie for 3 days, leaving my cell phone behind so we could enjoy the peace. Me and my buddies were on my boat, drinking beer and fishing, having a great time. We didn't get out much, so we were enjoying ourselves. My boat was a decent size, 35 feet, and could comfortably fit 6 people if they were friendly. We rented a cabin nearby to stay in overnight. For the past 6 years, we've done this kind of fishing and camping trip once a year. While I was downing another beer, the Coast Guard sped up to us, stopping next to the boat with their weapons drawn. They asked, "Is one of you Terry Bell?" "That's me," I answered. "What's going on here? Why are you pointing weapons at us?" "Sir, we were told you've been hijacked and held for ransom." "I assure you I'm fine. These are my friends, Joe and Al. They both work for me. We came here to fish for a few days without phones, so we wouldn't be disturbed. Now, could you please lower your weapons?" "Sorry, Mr. Bell. We need to board your boat and take a look around. Do you have any weapons on board?" "Just the usual emergency items like flare weapons. Come aboard." They quickly searched the boat and checked our IDs. Afterward, they apologized, but insisted I come with them. The police needed to speak with me at home. "Joe, Al, you guys keep fishing. I'll try to get back to the cabin tonight or tomorrow. If I don't, make sure the boat's secured and everything's locked up." I left with the Coast Guard and headed to shore. I had met Al and Joe in prison. 12 years ago, I was convicted of receiving stolen property, which I'll explain later. Joe and Al also met in prison while serving time for attack. Each of them had caught their wife cheating and knock up her lover. They could have been charged with attempted homicide, but they took a plea deal for attack. Both divorced afterward. We became good friends and looked out for each other in prison. After my release, I promised to help them when they came up for parole. I served 3 years before getting out. My father owned an auto parts warehouse, where I'd worked since high school, and I took over the business when he got sick and passed away. About a year after my release, Joe and Al were paroled. At the hearing, my dad and I promised them jobs at the warehouse, and Dad mentioned he had trailers near the site where they could live. Because they had jobs and a place to live, they were granted parole 8 years ago. Both thanked my dad and me. They were excellent workers, now they're close friends. Over time, they saved enough to buy used cars and became mechanics and tow truck drivers. They were jacks of all trades and could handle anything at a junkyard. All they needed was a fresh start. They even began dating, eventually married, and bought homes of their own. They were always grateful to my father and me for helping them out. They continued to work for us and were well paid. The police gave me a ride home since I didn't have my car. As soon as I walked in the door, Abby rushed over and hugged me. "Thank God you're okay. I was so worried." "Where have you been?" "On the lake, fishing. That was until the Coast Guard came up to the boat with weapons drawn. What the hell is going on?" A man stepped forward. I'm Detective Abel. I'm in charge of the case. We need to know where you've been for the past 24 hours. Nonsense. You dragged me away from my fishing trip, and I want to know why before I say anything. Fair enough. Your wife called this morning saying she got a call at work claiming you were hijacked and they were demanding a ransom of $250,000. The caller said they would call your house at 3 o'clock. We're all set up and waiting for the call. This has to be some kind of sick joke. Who the hell would snatch me? I own a damn warehouse and trailer park. What, are they after auto parts or a broken-down horse? Abby, did they say anything else? They told me I had 24 hours to raise the money, or you'd be eliminated. And if I contacted the police, you would die. They said they'd call at 3 o'clock with further instructions. I was terrified. They said if I called the police, you'd be dead. But I didn't know what to do. So I called anyway. I was so scared. Abby started crying. Mr. Bell, your wife made the right call. She couldn't handle this alone. That's easy for you to say. It wasn't your damn life at stake. What now? I'm here. I'm fine. Can't you all just leave my house? Mr. Bell, we have to take threats like this seriously. We'll stay and see if the call comes in. Now, can you account for your whereabouts over the last 24 hours? Sure. Joe and Al picked me up early yesterday morning. We rented a cabin by the lake for 4 days. We drove there, took my boat out, and went fishing. We arrived in the evening, cooked dinner, and hung out in the cabin. This morning, we had breakfast, and then the Coast Guard found us. That's it. You know the rest. It was almost 3 o'clock, and the detective had set up a phone beacon in the kitchen. Abby was ready to answer the call, and I sat in the living room with 2 other detectives, drinking coffee. A speakerphone on the coffee table allowed us all to listen. Detective Abel had Abby tell me she'd contacted her lawyer to help get the money, and he would pose as the lawyer if the caller asked. I just sat there shaking my head. Damn it, I could still be fishing, I muttered to the officers. Right at 3 o'clock, the phone rang, and Abby answered. Mrs. Bell, glad to see you made it home early for my call. Is the money ready? The disguised voice asked. Not yet. I contacted a lawyer to help me get the money, Abby replied. What? I told you if you contacted anyone, your husband would be dead. Did you also call the police? No, just a lawyer. I'm sorry, I didn't know how to get that much money. You only told me not to call the police. Please, don't hurt my husband. Put the damn lawyer on the phone. Abby handed the phone to Detective Abel, who played along. This is John Wells, the Bell's attorney. What do you need? We need the money or Bell dies. Is that clear enough for you? If we find out anyone contacted the cops, he's dead. This isn't a damn game. I'm not playing either. Before we give you that kind of money, we need proof you have Mr. Bell and that he's alive. We heard some noise on the other end, then a voice. Abby, it's me, Larry. These masked men grabbed me right after you left the hotel this morning. Please, give them what they want. Then we heard a loud thud, like someone being punched. Damn it, I shouted. That's my loser brother, Larry. What the hell does he mean you were with him this morning? As you can see, sweet Abby, we know you lied to us. Was that your husband in the background? Does he know you've been fooling around with his brother? Looks like we got the wrong Bell. We went to the warehouse yesterday and were told Mr. Bell was on vacation. We stopped by your house and followed you to your hotel. The room was registered to Mr. and Mrs. Bell, so we assumed it was your husband. After you left this morning, we took the wrong Bell. He kept telling us we had the wrong guy until he mentioned having a twin brother. What now that you don't have Terry Bell? The detective asked, still pretending to be the lawyer. $300,000 by 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, or Larry Bell dies. The extra money's for the lies and the trouble you caused. We'll call tomorrow morning with drop-off instructions. No more games. The line went dead, and I stood up, furious, yelling at Abby. You cheating strumpet! You've been messing around with my brother? I'm not paying a dime to save him. Let those pricks deal with him. It'll save me the trouble of doing it myself. 2 officers stood between Abby and me, telling me to sit down. I walked over to the fridge, grabbed a beer, and turned on the TV. I want nothing to do with my gigolo brother or my cheating wife. As soon as this is over, we're getting a divorce. The detective asked Abby if what the hijacker said was true, needing to know her every move since she left the house the previous morning. She was upset and crying, but I ignored her. I didn't care anymore. Abby started explaining to the detective, but tried to keep her voice low. I still heard everything. She admitted to meeting Larry at the motel, even though his wife thought he was out of town. They'd been having an affair for months. I felt my anger rising as I realized I had been played. After dinner last night, we went to our room. I'm not going into details about how we made love, Abby said. I cringed. Love-making? Larry never loved anyone. He only wanted you because you were married to me. He didn't care about you, and now neither do I. Abby kept talking, but she was clearly scared of me. She seemed relieved the police were there. We said goodbye in the morning and agreed to meet again in the evening. I went to work to keep things looking normal. That's when I got the call that my husband had been hijacked, and I realized how worried I was about him. I didn't know what to do, so I called the police. That's all I've told you. Did you plan to return to the room tonight? The detective asked, turning away from me. Yes, we had the room for 2 nights. Damn strumpet, I yelled. One of the officers jumped up to restrain me, but I stayed seated. I wasn't about to end up in jail again. Larry and I were twins, but we couldn't have been more different. I liked working with machines, while Larry was always chasing women. We got along as kids only because I let things slide. Whenever I had a girlfriend, Larry always managed to charm her away. He was smoother, more charismatic, and usually dumped them after he got what he wanted. My approach was simple. If the girls wanted Larry that badly, they could have him. I wasn't in love with any of them anyway. Our mother passed away from cancer when we were 18, and we lived with my father until we finished high school. Larry wanted to go to college and become a salesman. He was always good at talking. The only person Larry cared about was himself. I, on the other hand, stayed home to help Dad with the scrap metal business. To most people, it was just junk. But Dad's fortune was over $1 million tied up in inventory. I didn't go to college, choosing instead to help grow the business. Dad was proud of the work we did together. One night at a party, I met a girl, and we started dating. Within a year, we got married, and she moved in with me and Dad. Eventually, Dad gave us the house and moved into one of his trailers to give us more privacy. Over the next few years, my wife Beth and I had 2 children, and life was going well, until Larry came home from college. One day, I saw him flirting with Beth, and that was the breaking point. I slapped him hard and warned him, "If you ever come near her again, I'll destroy you." Beth stayed silent. She knew to keep quiet when I was angry. I had never accused her of anything, but I had my suspicions. Neither she nor Larry denied what I said that day. After that, we didn't see much of each other. Larry kept his distance from Beth and took a job as a traveling sales rep for a window and siding company. His job allowed him to meet plenty of women. He had the gift of gab and always found a way into the lives of wealthy women. He lived off them until he moved on to the next one. His job didn't pay for the lifestyle he wanted, but he got by because of the women he dated. It's been 12 years since I married Beth. We had a solid marriage, though I always had my doubts. We had 2 wonderful children, and because of them, I didn't dwell on the possibility of cheating. Around that time, my father's health started to decline after a stroke. I reached out to Larry asking if he wanted to join the salvage business, but he just laughed, saying he wanted nothing to do with it. Dad was disappointed, but I assured him I would always be there for him. One day, a man came to us with several cars he wanted to sell. Dad made an under-the-table deal, which wasn't the first time he'd done that to avoid paying extra taxes. Unfortunately, he didn't check the VIN numbers on the cars. A few days later, law enforcement showed up with a search warrant. The man had told the police he'd dumped the cars in our lot, and they were preparing to arrest my dad for receiving stolen property. There was no way I was letting Dad go to jail. I stepped forward to speak with the agents. "Sir, I took those cars. My father had no idea. I was planning to handle the registration, but didn't get the chance. All they needed was someone to arrest, and that someone was me." I was arrested, pleaded guilty, and was sentenced to 5 years in prison. My father was heartbroken and promised he'd do anything for me. I hugged him, and he tearfully apologized. The day I was taken away, I realized my dad wouldn't survive prison. He already had a weak heart, and I couldn't bear the thought of him dying alone in there. Beth left me and filed for divorce 2 months after I went to prison. She said she didn't want to live alone, and of course, she took the kids with her. She soon started dating an insurance agent and married him a few months later. Losing my kids hurt, but I said to hell with her. I kept in touch with my father through letters, and he visited me every month. Several of his cousins helped him run the salvage business while I was locked up. I couldn't do much from prison, but at least Dad trusted his cousins who were a bit younger than him. In prison, I met Al and Joe. They seemed like decent guys. Both of them had caught their wives with lovers and knocked them so badly the men had to be hospitalized. I could relate. I almost did the same to my own brother. I promised them that when they got out on parole, I'd help them however I could. I even talked to my father, and he agreed to hire them when the time came. After serving 3 years of my 5-year sentence, I was released. I was glad to be free and to help my father again. He made me part owner of the business, telling me that when he passed, it would be mine, and Larry would have no claim to it. His cousins were running things well, so we kept them on. Dad joked that they worked a little harder once I got back, which made us both smile. The following year, we hired Al and Joe, fulfilling the promise I made to them. They were grateful to us and said they always would be. Several years passed, and things were going well. Business was booming, and I made sure every vehicle that came through was inspected thoroughly. I wasn't going back to jail. One day, I rushed my father to the hospital after he had a heart attack. I called Larry, and he made it in time to say goodbye before Dad died. As promised, I inherited the rest of the business, the trailer park, and the house where I had lived with Beth and Dad. Larry got Dad's savings, stocks, and bonds, about $300,000, and left happy. He had recently married a wealthy widow named Cora, who owned a real estate business with her late husband. Cora was smart enough to have a prenup to protect her fortune. She was successful, intelligent, and attractive, though I think loneliness drew her to Larry. She could have done so much better. It was at one of Cora and Larry's parties where I met my current wife, Abigail. Abby was beautiful, with a great figure and legs. She could have easily been another one of Larry's conquests, but she was friends with Cora. Abby had been married and divorced twice, with no kids. She worked at an insurance office in downtown Cleveland. Abby and I started dating regularly, and soon we decided to get married. I incorporated the salvage business to protect it from anyone trying to claim it. Abby brought $400,000 into the marriage, and I didn't mind getting an advance on it. She believed we'd be together for life, even though she'd been married twice before. I didn't mind either. In fact, the prenup protected my assets too. I knew her savings came from her exes. I cared for her, but I'm not sure I'd call it love. I've always had too many questions to fully trust anyone. After I got out of prison, Beth agreed to let me see my children. I was pleased that they still called me Dad, and I was part of their lives. I was even helping both of them go to college. Life was good. Business was thriving. Al and Joe were my best friends, and I saw them often. I was married to a beautiful woman. Things were better than ever. A couple of months ago, Abby started acting strange. I chalked it up to something women go through and didn't think much of it, though I kept my guard up. I had no reason to believe she'd cheat on me. I told her I was going on a fishing trip with Joe and Al like we'd done for the past 6 years. We wouldn't have our cell phones, and I told her if there was an emergency, she could always contact the Coast Guard. So far, that had never happened. The detective was talking to his tech team, hoping to trace the phone number from the call. The caller had been on the line long enough. "Have we located the phone?" the detective asked. "Yes, sir, but it's not a solid trace. The caller used a prepaid track phone, disposable. You can add minutes, but they're hard to trace. I tracked the number, but all it tells me is that it was bought at a Walmart. Could have been purchased anywhere. The tower that picked up the call is in downtown Cleveland." "Can we narrow it down?" the detective asked. "Not really, just within a 5-mile radius of downtown Cleveland." "Which isn't much, sir." "Send 2 officers to the motel and see if we can find out anything," the detective ordered. "Mrs. Bell, we'll need the name of the motel and your room number. Maybe someone saw something or a lobby camera picked up some footage. Also, check if Larry Bell's car is still in the parking lot." Abby gave the officer the info he asked for, including Larry's car make. She grew worried and asked about the ransom. I stepped in. "I'm not paying a dime. If you want him, you can cover the ransom yourself. Also, we should tell Cora since her husband's been hijacked." "No, we can't tell her," Abby said. "Actually, Mrs. Bell, we do need to speak with her," Detective Abel said. "It's her husband. She has the right to know." "Let me call her," I suggested. "She can come here and you can talk to her." "Fine, but get her here fast," the detective replied. I called Cora. "Hey, Cora, it's Terry. Can you come over? We need to talk." "Terry, is this about Larry? He was supposed to be in Pittsburgh, but he's not there. Do you know where he is?" Cora asked. "No, I don't. The detective needs to speak with you in person, so please come quickly," I said. 15 minutes later, Cora arrived. I met her at the door and brought her into the living room. "What's happening? Where's Larry? Is he okay?" she asked, worried. "Mrs. Bell," the detective started. "Just call me Cora. There are 2 Mrs. Bells here," she interrupted. "Where's Abby?" "She went to the bathroom," I said. "Cora, what did you mean when you said Larry wasn't in Pittsburgh?" the detective asked. "Do you know where he is? Why won't anyone tell me anything?" Cora trembled. I looked her in the eye. "Cora, Larry's been hijacked. They thought it was me but took him by mistake. He's alive, but they're asking for a ransom, Cora gasped. Oh my God, why would they snatch him, or you? We need to know everything that's happened recently, the detective said. We spoke to Larry briefly, and we know he's alive. We're trying to find him. Cora looked uneasy, but agreed to help. I've been suspecting Larry of cheating. He went to Pittsburgh for a home show and said he was sharing a motel room to save money. He's done it before, but this time he seemed different. What made you think he was cheating? The detective asked. He's been distant, avoiding closeness and disappearing more often. I hired a private investigator to follow him. He left yesterday, but when he checked into the motel, the investigator found another man in his room. Larry wasn't there. A private investigator? I cut in. I needed to know. It cost me $1,000, but it was worth it if it proved anything. This morning, the investigator told me Larry never showed up, so he returned half the money. Just then, Abby came in, eyes red from crying. Cora rushed over to hug her, but Abby held her hands up. What's going on? Cora demanded. Why is my husband being held for ransom, and why is my best friend avoiding me? What aren't you telling me, Terry? You've never lied to me. I handed her a beer and told her to sit. I explained everything, including how they mistakenly took Larry instead of me. The reason they confused us, I added, is because my wife was having an affair with your husband. What? Cora shouted. Larry and Abby are having an affair? Turning to Abby, Cora snapped, You lied to me, comforted me, and now I find out you're the one cheating with him. Cora started crying, and I hugged her until she calmed down. Detective Abel then asked if she had more to add. He gambled a lot and lost money, Cora said. I don't know if that's why they wanted Terry. The detective turned to me. Do you have any enemies or know anyone who'd want to snatch you? I'm worth a lot on paper, but I can't get that kind of money quickly. My brother probably set this up. He's been sleeping with Abby and knows she has access to money. Abby shouted, He didn't do this. He loves me. And we were going to leave together. You're just jealous. You two-faced witch, Cora yelled. He's all yours. He even took money from my account. I'm done with him. Detective Abel intervened, trying to calm everyone. We still need to find Larry and the hijackers. Can either of you get the $300,000? Cora looked desperate. I only have a couple $100,000 left. He's still my husband until I divorce him. Don't spend another dime on him, I said. He's been using you. Let Abby deal with it. Abby snapped. That would wipe me out. You two don't care at all, do you? I muttered. He cheated on me with you. If you want to save him, do it yourself. Cora, I'll file for divorce before you on Monday. Bring me coffee, I joked. Cora stayed silent, her eyes filled with tears. Detective Abel sent 2 officers with Abby to get the ransom money, nearly all of her savings. When they returned, I stood up. I'm leaving, I said. You can't, the detective replied. Either arrest me or I'm going fishing. Call me if you need me for the funeral, I said coldly. Cora told them she couldn't stay because of Abby and would go to her own house. The detective arranged for a security guard to watch her home and promised to keep her updated. I turned to Abby. I'll stay at the cabin for a few more days. Once you get your lover back, I expect you to move out of my house. It's mine now. Detective Abel didn't know what to do with me. He walked me to my car, reminding me to stay alert since I was supposedly the original target. Thanks, but I doubt it, I said, driving off to the cabin. Later, Al and Joe came back with pizza and beer, and I told them what had happened. The next morning, I went fishing, waving at the Coast Guard, who I suspected were keeping an eye on me. We made sure to make it easy for them, blasting the foghorn when we passed by again. Around 3 a.m., a car pulled into my driveway as Al and Joe were getting out. Al in my car and Joe in his. Detective Abel and 2 other detectives, all in suits, stepped out. You don't look like you're here for camping or fishing, Abel said. Where are your friends headed? I explained. I was going to rent the cabin a few more days. They're picking up their families to stay. We all came in Joe's car and I lent mine to Al. So why are you here? Did you save my wonderful brother? Abel responded, We found your brother. He was shaken up, but he'll be fine. I don't think he was involved in the hijacking. I've known him all my life, and I'm sticking to my theory, I said. Want a Coke or something? A Coke would be nice. Can we look around the cabin? Abel asked. Sure, come in. It's messy from breakfast, but we'll clean before they get back with their wives, I joked. As they came in, Abel filled me in on what happened after I left. The detectives questioned the motel clerk, who said someone asked for the Bell's room, but didn't get a good look at him. Larry and Abby's room had a back exit by the pool. Larry was likely taken through that door. No one saw anything, but Larry's car was still in the parking lot, and most of his stuff, including his wallet, was left behind, minus cash and credit cards. The other detectives joined us, and I brought snacks. Abel continued. The hijackers called at 9 a.m. asking for the lawyer to hand over the ransom. The drop was in a dangerous part of town, so we couldn't let Abby go. So, my wife used her savings to pay the ransom for my brother, her lover? I asked. Yes, but we usually get the money back 80% of the time, Abel replied. So, Larry's safe, but you lost the money, I said. Yes, we lost track of the money. The hijackers had a well-planned operation. You mentioned they, so it was more than one person? According to your brother, after Abby left the motel, 2 masked men knocked him down, injected him with something, and he woke up in a dark, windowless room. He had water but no food and was lying on an old mattress. I know you think he set this up, but I can't see him doing this to himself, Abel explained. Detective Abel continued. Larry was told to bring a suitcase of money to an abandoned shopping center. The area looked like a war zone. There was an old green Chevy in a garage. Larry had to place the suitcase in the trunk, take the key, and leave. The hijackers said they had another key and would call with Larry's location after checking the money. When Larry protested, they threatened to eliminate him if the money wasn't delivered by 10 o'clock. We didn't like it, but we agreed and planned to watch the car. Jim and Bob hid nearby with binoculars, keeping an eye on the building and car. We waited until noon, but no one showed up. I was worried something went wrong, but the tracker showed the suitcase was still in the car. Then Mrs. Bell got a call with Larry's location. He was 2 houses down, locked in an old loan office or vault. The lock was welded shut, so Jim had to break it with a sledgehammer. We found Larry in his underwear, dehydrated and using a bucket for a toilet. He had no idea who hijacked him, just 2 masked men. They were angry when they realized they had mistaken him for you. I asked, what happened to Abby's money? Didn't you say the suitcase was still in the car? That's the crazy part, Abel said. When Bob opened the trunk, the suitcase was there, but the money was gone. The car had a false bottom, and the money was taken through a hole leading to the sewer. We found where the person exited, about 100 yards away, but no leads on who it was. Larry was taken to the hospital, dirty and shaken, but okay. I followed your wife there. Jim and Bob stayed at the scene but found no clues. We had the Chevy towed for inspection, but I doubt we'll find anything. Did you tell Cora? I asked. Yes, she thanked us, but told Larry she's filing for divorce. She was glad he was safe, but that was the end for her, Abel replied. The detectives stood up to leave, and I thanked them for the update. I wanted nothing to do with my brother. The best thing he could do was stay away from me. Before leaving, Abel asked if I had any idea who might have tried to snatch me. Detective, I run a scrap metal recycling center. I was with my best friends, and my cousins were running the warehouse. Abby might have hired someone, but what would she gain? I bought her everything she wanted. My brother, though, he's always after money. My bet is still on him. Some time passed before Al and Joe arrived with their families. Everyone seemed happy, though things were a little awkward because they knew about Abby. She had never been close with any of them. I told the guys I was feeling a bit down and planned to stay at a motel for a couple of days. I encouraged them to enjoy the cabin and my boat, and I trusted them completely with everything I owned. They were true friends. I promised to be back in 2 days to dock the boat and close up the cabin. I told them to enjoy their vacation, and I'd see them at work on Monday. I figured some peace and quiet would do me good, giving me time to think about my next steps. I called Cora and invited her to dinner the next day, and she agreed. I met Cora the following day. She looked beautiful but sad, dressed in her usual business attire since she worked in real estate. We met at Red Lobster, arriving separately. Why did you want to have dinner, Terry? She asked. The last few days have been rough, and I thought we could both use a friend. So, did you see my a-hole brother yesterday? Yeah, I got there just after Abby left, she said. I can't believe a friend would do that to me. I never want to see her again. Larry tried to apologize, but I told him to go to hell. That was it for me. First he steals from me, then he cheats on me with Abby. I told him I'm filing for divorce on Monday, and if he fights it, I'll press theft charges for forging my name and taking money from my savings. God, I can't believe I ever married him. I feel like such an idiot for staying with him, she added. He's always been a smooth talker. I hoped he'd changed when he married you, but clearly he hasn't. I'm seeing a lawyer on Monday, too. If you want to come with me, that's fine, I said. She smiled. Your brother may be a talker, but you've always been a kind man, willing to help anyone. Larry has always been jealous of you, but You probably knew that already. What did he say about the hijacking? Did he admit to setting it up? I asked. Cora chuckled. He claimed he had nothing to do with it. He said they were after you but didn't know why. They were furious when they realized they had the wrong bell. I'm still confused about all of this. Is there something you're not telling me? I asked. Let's leave it at that for now, she replied. Talking about Larry makes me sick. How about we go see a lawyer together? Maybe grab lunch afterward? I said softly. Cora, I've always cared about you. It's a shame I picked the wrong brother, but I didn't know you then. We each have to deal with our divorces now. Some might even think we faked the hijacking to be together, she laughed. But that doesn't mean we can't have dinner or lunch once in a while. I loved spending time with her. She was kind, genuine, and easy to talk to. I had thought about her many times, but never admitted my feelings. We were both married and respected our vows. After the divorces, I hoped things would change. When I returned to the cabin on Sunday, Al and Joe, or maybe their wives, had already cleaned up. They thanked me repeatedly for letting them use the boat. I told them they could use it any time. The wives even gave me hugs. Al and Joe had already returned the boat, tied it up, and locked everything. I said goodbye to Joe and his family, telling them I'd see them tomorrow, though I'd be late because I had to stop by the lawyer's office. I gave Al and his family a ride home since they didn't have a car with them. On Sunday evening, I called Abby from the motel and told her, I hope you're packing because I'll be home Monday after work and you'd better be gone or you'll regret it. It was a threat, but I didn't care. I wasn't sure I'd actually do anything, but I was definitely going to throw her out. She wanted to talk about money and divorce. I told her, it's all in the prenup. You'll get what you came in with and the house, and almost everything in it stays with me. When she said most of her money was gone because she gave it to Larry, I replied, you can thank my brother for that. Talk to him. Maybe he can return some of the money. She got angry. You're a horrible, pathetic person. You would let your brother die. I cut her off. I didn't do anything. If he hadn't been fooling around with my wife, I might have helped him. Anyway, I'm seeing a lawyer on Monday. You'll be served with divorce papers later this week. I suggest you sign them. After I returned from the lawyer's office on Monday, I got a call from Cora at work. Larry stopped by my office to pick up his things from the house. He had a small trailer, and I told him he better take only what belonged to him. He tried to apologize again, but I told him to just leave. I'll be mailing the divorce papers to his company's office in Youngstown. As he was leaving, she continued, I saw Abby in a car following Larry. I think she rented a truck. My idiot brother helped her move her stuff. Cora told me she had scared Larry by telling him, I had dinner with Terry on Saturday, and he said if he ever saw you again, you'd be a dead man. I never said that, but Cora told me it scared the hell out of Larry, she added. Cora told me she also informed Detective Abel that she had canceled all of Larry's credit cards, both those in his name and the ones they shared. She was done paying his bills and mentioned that Abel was keeping an eye out for any activity on the stolen cards. The case wouldn't be closed until the hijackers were caught and hopefully the money recovered. Since Larry had been found, the case had been put on the back burner. Work slowly returned to normal. Cora and I started having dinner at least twice a week. We both filed for divorce, and the lawyers said it would take about 90 days. We were both surprised that neither Abby nor Larry contested the divorce. Contesting would have been pointless since we both had prenuptial agreements. Over the next month, Cora and I grew closer. She confided in me about things she hadn't shared before. A few months earlier, Larry had traveled to Las Vegas and forged her name to withdraw over $100,000. She only found out when she saw a bank statement, right as Larry was supposed to be on a 2-day trip to Pittsburgh. At first, she just wanted to confront him. But then she wanted to know why he had done it. She suspected the money went to cover gambling debts and wondered if he had another woman. Cora asked me to check on Abby and Larry's schedules, and it turned out they'd both been out of town that weekend. Abby had gone to Iowa to visit her sister. I was more annoyed than ever and told Cora that I needed some payback. But I knew I had to wait. Too little time had passed since the hijacking. Later, we found out that Abby and Larry were living together just outside Cleveland. They were renting an apartment, still working, but we didn't know if they were happy. Cora suggested I leave it alone. It's over, she said. Cora mentioned that Larry thought I was a fool for going to jail to protect my father. There's no way he would have done that, she said. Cora told me she thought it was a beautiful and heroic act to protect my sick father. I realized I was falling in love with her. I loved being around her, and she made me feel at home. I asked, Cora, when our divorces are final, would you marry me? We hadn't even made love yet, but I meant it, I confessed. Terry, are you sure you want to do this? I'm probably not the best lover, considering my husband wants another woman, she replied, but she smiled and didn't say no. Our divorces will be finalized next month, I said. Let's celebrate, spend the night together, and then you can decide. I already know how I feel, I told her. I had no doubt about my feelings. Being around her made me happy. A month later, we both received our divorce papers in the same week. Cora said she wanted to get away for the weekend with me. I decided to take her to Pittsburgh and booked us a stay at the Sheraton Inn, a great spot to explore the city. We left on Friday, driving through Youngstown, crossing the Ohio River into West Virginia, and then reaching Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I stopped in Youngstown for gas and used my credit card. Then I made a large deposit in the overnight box at Chase Bank, telling Cora, I meant to deposit this before leaving, but since it's the same bank, I'll drop it off here. It's too much money to carry around. We had dinner at the Sheraton, and it was wonderful to be with her. After dinner and a few drinks, we went up to the room and made love. The next morning, we explored the city, visiting the Carnegie Institute, a museum. Later, we decided to catch a baseball game. We weren't Pirates fans, being from Cleveland, but we acted like kids and had a blast. We went out for dinner again, then returned to the hotel for cocktails and some dancing. It was just nice being together. I couldn't believe my brother had cheated on a woman like Cora. She was beautiful, fun, wonderful, and a great lover, everything I could want in a girlfriend or wife. The next day, we headed back to Cleveland, passing through Steubenville and a few small Amish towns. We stopped to do some shopping and sightseeing along the way. I dropped Cora off at her house and told her I'd like to see her Monday after work. On Monday, she cooked us dinner. She was an amazing cook, too. After we finished eating, there was a knock at the door. Cora answered it. It was Detective Abel. Mrs. Bell, may I come in? I have a few questions for you. Of course, come in, she said. Terry, Detective Abel is here, she called. I walked into the room, and Abel looked a little surprised to see me. Before you say anything, I started. Cora and I have been seeing each other. This only started after we both found out about our exes cheating. You're both adults. What you do is your business, Abel said. I have a few questions about the credit cards you canceled that were stolen. Do you still have a list? Yes, it's in the desk. I'll get it, Cora replied. She handed the list to Detective Abel. What's this about? Cora asked. I noticed you canceled the Chase card you both used. Is that right? Yes, why? She asked. Your husband had another Chase card he used last Friday at a gas station in Youngstown. Larry was at his corporate office in Youngstown on Friday. He said he didn't use that card and that it was stolen. I only canceled the cards I had duplicates of. I didn't know he had another Chase card, Cora explained. Was my name on that card? No, Abel said. He claimed it was his alone. He ordered a new card but hadn't used it. So, what do you want from me? I just need to confirm the cards you canceled. That's all you can do, Cora said. It sounds like Larry's problem, not mine. You're right, Abel agreed. But I needed to check. That card wasn't just used for gas. It was also used for an overnight deposit. Someone put $100,000 into an account that already had $75,000. What? I asked, shocked. Someone put $100,000 into Larry's savings account? Who else could have done that but Larry himself? Did you ask him? Yes, Abel replied. He didn't have much to say. Your ex-wife was there demanding to know where the money came from and why he didn't tell her about the $75,000. Larry just clammed up and refused to answer. You may be right about your brother, Mr. Bell, Abel continued, but we can't prove anything. We're just tracking the stolen cards. Larry claimed this card wasn't stolen, but he was uncertain when he gave me the list. After Abel left, Cora looked at me, her eyes filled with questions. I knew she wanted to talk, so I decided to be straightforward. Cora, are you going to marry me? I asked. Terry, I care about you. I really do, she said softly. But I have one big problem. What's that? I asked. I'm sure we can work through it. It's about the hijacking, Cora said. I have a feeling you know more than you've told me. If we get married, I need to be able to trust you. I've been married twice, and both my husbands lied to me, not just about cheating. I don't want that again. I smiled, though I felt a pang of guilt. Why do you think I know more? Terry, we were in Youngstown on Friday, she said calmly. You got gas and stopped at Chase Bank to make a deposit. I know you well enough to tell when you're hiding something. Did you find out about Abby and Larry and stage this hijacking so I'd see what kind of man Larry really is? I hesitated, but I knew I owed her the truth. So, what do you want to know? If I knew about it, if I was involved? I just want the truth, she said. I need to be able to trust you, and you can trust me. You made that deposit knowing I'd question it. You were sending me a message, weren't you? It was a big step for me, a step toward trust that I rarely took. Aside from Al and Joe, I hadn't fully trusted anyone else. But Cora was right. If we were going to be together, we needed to trust each other completely. All right, I said, deciding to come clean. I'll tell you everything. One of my best clients thought he saw me in Las Vegas. He said he approached a guy who looked like my twin, hugging a woman as if she were his mistress. My client greeted him with, "How the hell are you doing, you stupid son of a witch?" The guy got mad and told him to back off. That's when my client realized it wasn't me. I continued. I showed him a picture of Abby and asked if that was the woman he saw. He said yes, and I told him it was my twin brother and his wife. He then said, damn, he was all over her like newlyweds. I played along, but I knew the truth. After that, I called Abby's sister and found out she hadn't been to Las Vegas. So I knew Abby went with Larry, and I figured you paid for the trip. I had paid for her airfare, thinking she was going to her sister's. Cora's expression tightened as I went on. I checked Abby's savings, and she hadn't withdrawn any money for the trip. That's when I decided to get even. I asked a few close friends for help. The rest is history. You would have let him die? Cora asked, her voice trembling. Of course not, I said. But I wanted him to suffer. I can't stand him, but he's still my brother. I just hoped you wouldn't help bail him out. I was surprised Abby gave the money, but I'm sure she thought she'd get it back once the hijackers were caught. Why did you give Larry money on Friday? She asked, still processing. I got rid of all his cards except for the one in his name after you mentioned you'd canceled the rest. I checked the balance. It was $75,000, likely what he took from you. I used it to buy gas so Detective Abel would know the card had been used. Then I deposited the money into his account. Larry's so greedy he'd never admit someone else put that money there, and I knew it would create doubt between him and Abby. She'll always wonder if it's her money. I laughed bitterly. There's no way he can explain that kind of cash. Cora stared at me, her expression unreadable. What did you do with the rest of the money? I didn't need any of it. I bought stock in my company for the two friends who helped me. $50,000 each. They now own about 4% of the company. I told them to hold on to it for now. They're happy to have a stake in the business. The remaining $100,000 is for you, the money Larry stole. I thought you could put it in the real estate account. Cora didn't know what to say. I had essentially hijacked her husband for her benefit, told her the truth, and didn't take any money for myself. She knew I did it to get back at both Abby and Larry, but I had also helped her. Well, that's everything, I said. It's up to you whether you trust me. I love you, Cora, and I want you in my life, and I promise not to lie to you. Cora looked at me for a long time, then kissed me softly. She took my hand, led me to the bedroom, and we made love. We decided to rent a cabin and have a small private wedding. It was a beautiful setting by the lake, with nature's calm all around us. Al, Joe, their families, and the rest of my staff were there. Cora's parents attended, and I finally met her sister and a few other relatives. Some of her real estate employees were also there. It was too cold to swim, but everyone enjoyed a boat ride, and we all appreciated the peaceful surroundings. No one mentioned Abby or Larry, and nothing was said about the hijacking, but I saw Cora hugging Al and Joe, realizing who my true friends were. The wedding was filled with food, music, and the warmth of family and friends. Cora's parents were surprised by how much I looked like Larry, but she quickly explained that he was my twin. After everyone left, Cora and I took a moonlit boat ride, just the two of us. It was peaceful, romantic, and the perfect way to begin our new life together. We spent 4 days at the cabin, fishing and simply enjoying each other's company. There were no distractions or drama, and it felt like we were finally free from the complications of the past. Cora and I had a business arrangement for our future. I owned my parts warehouse, and she owned her real estate business. Everything else we shared. We decided to sell both our houses and bought a condo together for a fresh start. It was wonderful coming home to her. Sometimes we went out for dinner, other times we stayed in. Cora bonded quickly with Al and Joe's wives, who became her best friends. Since Cora couldn't have children, we often watched their kids. They started calling us Aunt Cora and Uncle Terry, and it felt like we had built a new family around us. Eventually, we even considered adoption. From what we've heard, Larry and Abby aren't together anymore. Larry apparently moved out of state, which suited me fine. Cora mentioned seeing Abby a few times during business trips. She's gained weight and is seeing someone at her insurance firm, Cora said, but they never spoke. Abby would just shake her head whenever she saw Cora. We never heard back from Detective Abel, so I assumed the hijacking case is closed. I didn't care anymore. I had moved on. Cora and I were happy, and nothing else mattered. Our business was thriving, and the friends who helped with the hijacking were now part owners of the company, strengthening our bond. Life was good. Cora and I made a great team, both in life and in business. One day, as we sat in our condo, Cora looked at me and asked, "Terry, do you ever wonder what might have happened if things had gone differently with Larry, Abby, everything?" I paused for a moment. Sometimes, I admitted. But then I remember that everything led us to this moment, and I wouldn't change a thing. She smiled, took my hand, and said, "Me neither." We leaned back, watching the sunset over the city, knowing we had overcome life's challenges together. And that was all that really mattered.